Kia ora tātou. Ko Puke Tāpapa, toku maunga, ko Manukau, toku wahapu, ko Peter Shand, toku ingoa. My name is Peter Shand and I'm the head of school at Elam at the moment, and welcome to this webcast. So if I can introduce Mary Jane and Peter, and they're going to tell you the real story.
Kia ora, my name is Melisani Faliafa. I'm a student at the Elam School of Fine Arts. I'm currently in my third year, and I came from Papatoetoe High School.
Hi, my name's Peter Dirksen. I'm a second year student at Elam studying a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and my high school was Oromoto College in Tauranga.
I was always gravitated towards the creative arts. I had a strong foundation within creative practice, within my cultural identity, and my parents were mat makers and tapa makers, and so Elam School of Fine Arts was my first choice, my only choice actually, just based on its reputation. So
I decided to go to Elam because I wanted to really seriously pursue my art career. I guess I had these ideas that I would sort of do it on the side or as an amateur, as a hobbyist, but I realised that that wasn't really for me, and I wanted to really dedicate my life towards making art. I chose Elam specifically because I knew it had a really good reputation nationally and internationally. I was familiar with a lot of the lecturers and their work, and I really admired their work, and so I thought these are people that I want to teach me. I also sort of chose Elam because one of my friends went through before me, and I saw the way that her work really matured and progressed and became a lot more critical, and that was something that I really craved in my own practice. So Elam first year was honestly quite a scary experience. I came into it expecting it to be one thing, and I was completely shocked and surprised, pleasantly so, by how diverse the range of art making practices that I engaged with were. I had access to a lot of different workshops and spaces that really pushed me to think about my art in a critical way and to pursue different techniques of making. So I came into Elam as a painter. I thought that was something that I really wanted to pursue. But then through this kind of whirlwind of experimentation and constant making in the first year, I really broadened my perspective and ended up being a lot more interested in sculpture and installation and photography and just this huge range of different ideas and processes that I think really pushed me as an artist.
in your first year, you're introduced into 4 core courses, doing 2 studio practices, 1 critical studies and 1 workshop-based course. Within the studio practices, you're introduced into 6 different modes, which is painting, time-based performance, sculpture, creative thinking, photography, and printmaking. And so I guess when you're introduced into those different practices and workshops, you're also exploring your own sense of artistic style, and in that sense is establishing your motive in your practice going into 2nd and 3rd year.
So just to unpack a technical term, crit, which is essentially criticism or critique of work, and it sounds really challenging and really negative, yeah. But what it's about is about all of the artists in the room sitting down and going through a practice which is presented through the final work, and trying to unravel an understanding of where the maker is coming from, how it is received, what the engagement with the work is. So it's really important for developing a practice.
So Elam has a huge variety of dedicated workshops and spaces. These include the screen printing studio with fine arts presses, a digital hub with access to audio, video, film and photographic equipment, a printed matter hub, a ceramics workshop, a woodworking workshop, metalworking workshop, a foundry, a photography lab with darkroom and lighting studio, and of course studio spaces where students can make their work. And each of these spaces is run by a specialist technician who basically guide you through the process of learning how to use this equipment confidently and help you realize some of your more crazy ideas.
So I guess coming in here first year, you're introduced to many students from different high schools, and you're all in one studio interacting, and I guess the fact that you guys are all fresh from high school and just from your own sort of walks of life, you sort of gain a sense of support system within your peers, and that in a sense is a community, and you're progressively growing with each other and supporting one another and working in ways to, I guess, just get through the year and nailing, assessments and hand-in dates, and I guess having that community foundation and sense of unity is really essential to getting through Elim. And I guess Elim has that sense of community, and that is a necessity in a sense. Yeah.
Thanks. So, but both of you you didn't have friends come with you from high school, did you? So, in terms of community, did you just kind of have to put yourself out there? How did this build for you? How did you find your place within a community? Was it natural, or do you have to put a lot of work in?
For me personally, my experience coming into Elim was very easy flowing. The University of Auckland had Tuakana community, which is a community for Māori and Pacific students, helping them excel in academic success. And so I was very grateful to have met Tuakana mentors and have this space in Elim which devotes to Tuakana students and helping them in their creative practice. So very happy to have that sense of our community and those peers around me.
Whereas for me it was a bit daunting because I didn't know anyone really coming in here. And obviously it's quite hard to make friends when you're trying to frantically make work at the same time. So for me, I joined the BINT group, which is a student-led group for queer students. And we basically had sort of monthly, 2 weekly meetings where we got together, talked about queer issues and how we were sort of situated within the Elim hierarchy. And this was really important for me because it meant that I could interact with students like me across year groups. It wasn't just my year group, and sort of forge those connections quite early on.
What's really interesting about that is that Auckland is a super diverse city. Yeah, so in terms of its population, but also the different communities that exist within it. And what's lovely about what you're talking about is there's both really strong institutional support. So Tuakana Tainara is really critical for that, and it's about focusing on the different experiences that different students bring to the university and how we can help everyone to succeed in their own terms in the best way they can, and academically, of course. And then it was really BINT was such a great initiative because of being student-led and being responsive. So I remember the first project that one of the other members of BINT did, and it was the queering the curriculum stickers that went up. And what was really great about that was that it came from you and some staff colleagues, but we were able to hear it and go, this is really pertinent for how student voice can influence the ways in which we teach and understand the student body and help, again, different communities to achieve their best, yeah.
So I'm doing a double major in Pacific Studies and Anthropology, and that in relation to my art practice works hand in hand. Most of the drive that I have in my artistic practice is coming from anthropology and Pacific Studies. So in that sense, it's manageable and it's exciting, and it's sometimes kind of nice to get out of Elim and be out within the other faculties.
So I'd say in high school it's a much more directive approach where you're sort of told these are the confines in which you have to work, whereas at Elim it's a lot more broad and open and a collaborative kind of process with your teacher. So they treat you as equals and treat your ideas very seriously. And as I said before, lots of the learning that you do is also with your peers, and so it's this much smaller group environment where you're really communicating and talking about our ideas and not so much just carrying out the task. And also learning how to present your work is really important, because you're not just sticking it up on your wall in your bathroom or something, right? You're actually trying to present it in a sort of official, real space, and what that means for your practice and for your work is really important.
So I've been at Elim for a long time, and one of the great joys is not only working with students and getting to know students when they're studying, but then also following and supporting their careers after they graduate. Elim's one of the schools which has an embarrassment of riches in terms of the contribution that we have made to New Zealand art and culture, and this is through really leading practitioners. So some of the young artists that I have worked with and have followed their careers are people like Luke Willis-Thompson, who was a Turner Prize finalist in London 2 years ago, Kate Newby, who has a really successful practice in North America, Fiona Connor, who is based in Los Angeles and has a really exciting social-based practice there, and also others like Zach Langton-Pole, who won the BMW award, Sarah Rose, who works in Scotland, and the students who kind of have explored the world and have the opportunity to have that kind of global connect is really terrific. That's possibly changing, but so we also have students who have been really successful at a national level, and the number of art galleries that constantly exhibit student Elam graduate work is second to none. So that's really clear in terms of what the transition to being a successful working artist involves. But increasingly what's really fascinating is the way that the skills that you acquire at Elam, particularly in terms of the critical skills, the collaborative skills, the need for communication, and fundamentally the creativity that you bring to your work, is finding real success for students in a diverse area of different types of arenas. So one of the students I worked with, Imogen Kerr, is now a specialist at Christie's in London, and she's responsible for setting up the new China market for Christie's and the office there. So that's a really sophisticated, challenging business job, but part of what she brings to that is she brings her understanding as a painting student to that work, and that really develops how she's advancing that business. And last year I found out about a master's graduate that I worked with who is now working for the UN in an aid and development program. And so what she's bringing to that is her understanding of what it is to be a maker and someone who connects with community into something of that scale and of that importance to the world. So the range of types of activities that students go into, contemporary artists, teachers and educators, curators, arts administrators, in arts business, filmmaking, we have a lot of filmmakers. All of these things are about opening up the opportunities that creativity brings. And I think what we recognise in the current climate is that those capacities are more and more valuable to more and more workplaces. So that's really super exciting. So that's a wee way off for you guys. Just a wee way.
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you have plans? What are you thinking that you might want to be?
Very broad plans. Yeah, I mean, I essentially want to become a practicing and exhibiting artist, right? I don't just want to make work in isolation. I kind of want to find my voice in the national and I guess global art scene. Yeah. At the same time, I'm also really interested in gallery work. So I think that Elam, having that conjoint option and having sort of opportunities to work in these two gallery spaces, Project Space and George Fraser, and you can become involved in the sort of administration side of things there and curatorial side of things. I think those are really good opportunities to sort of pursue that side of the art making process as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think after Elam, after finishing a degree, also continuing with postgrad is another option I have after finishing Elam, and potentially taking up another degree in the arts faculty, diving into a more curatorial practice and being able to engage and communicate with the networks within New Zealand and the arts organisations that are within our communities, and I guess finding people and I guess just connecting with them and being able to establish yourself within this scene.
And even I've only been here for a year and a half, and I've already had lots of opportunities to sort of reach out into the broader art community and work with artists, and I find that really valuable and quite exciting that that's already happening.
So one of the important things for incoming students is to know about the scholarships that are offered at the University of Auckland, and they come at different levels, whether or not they're university scholarships, faculty scholarships, or some Elam scholarships and prizes, and they're of a range of value. So some of them can be up to $5,000 per year for 3 years while you do your undergraduate program, through to smaller awards of $1,500, but all of these help. Of course, the main ones are the university admission scholarships, which are of a value of $20,000 for students. That's an extraordinary way to kind of kickstart your educational career. But not only in terms of first years, we also have scholarships which are available for students as they progress. And so Mary Jane's going to speak to one that she received, which is a really generous scholarship of a value of $5,000.
Yes, yeah. So coming into my third year, I was definitely low on resources, and so I was searching for free money, I guess. And so I went into the Creative Arts website, and there are different range of scholarships catering to postgrad students, undergrads, first year to third year, and yeah, it was amazing. I got the scholarship and was able to purchase paints, canvas, and and it was great timing to being under the COVID lockdown, and being able to still get resources from these funds was just amazing, yeah.
So one of the things that this year has taught us is that we need to be really agile and we need to be focused on resilience. It's kind of been a bit of an interesting time for us in terms of how we've moved teaching around, but it's also been something which has come just ahead of a really substantial change in the way that we're focusing the BFA. So we're moving it to a 3-year degree, which we hope will be more advantageous for more students and increase the diversity and access to education that we can provide. And then within those 3 years, we've quite radically overhauled the process by which we step students through their learning. And this was after an international external review where we got some really helpful advice. We did a lot of consultation, we did a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking. And the staff have worked collectively and with input from students to develop up a new program which we're genuinely excited by. The first year in some ways is not so different, because we still need to have that opportunity to help students through a range of different practices which are just simply not been available to them, whether at high school or personally. So things like sculpture or intermedia, performative work, these are things which are not typically experienced. And then also even with things that we know, so with painting, part of the experience of first year painting is to somewhat undo, but in order to add, so we're relearning things, going back to fundamentals in some way. So what is painting as a material rather than as a representational tool? These kinds of things. So those stay within the main studio parts of the first year program. Critical studies, we're redirecting very consciously towards what it means for artists. So it's not just about a whole series of historical or theoretical information that comes in on top of your practice. It's something that we're keen to build from within. So what you have is a more sophisticated practice by the time you graduate. Alongside those will also be just a couple of creative careers courses. Now these will be focused on different types of outcomes that you might want to pursue after you graduate. Curatorial practice, I think, is really interesting in that. What does it mean for an artist or someone who's really practiced in the idea of making objects and working materially to work with curating exhibitions or events or festivals, the sorts of things which kind of are around that connection with the world for art. And then the third part that you'll also be choosing is around thematic areas of inquiry. So this is where we have large studio projects, but they're open in terms of the media and the approach that you might take, but they're focused in particular areas, whether that's in a suite of things which combine with our research interests of staff. So we have suites of Indigenous practices courses about identity, about ecology, about new technologies, about materiality, and that just means that it gives you something to land on in terms of how you're investigating a particular project and how you want to realise that in an artwork. But of course the reason you want to come to art school is because you want to do your own thing. So the final semester is what we call a capstone project, and that is an independent studio project that you invent, develop, experiment with and realise as the final part of your BFA. So what we're doing is clearly we're helping you with an arc of your practice from something which is experimental, really fast turnover, learning lots of things all the time, right through to something where you then are in a position to have a really concentrated and developed independent project that really speaks to who you have become as an artist over the 3 years of your time at Elam. We no longer have a portfolio requirement, and that's come about for 2 reasons. One is that we got very clear advice that the portfolio was a barrier for some students, and they were not applying because they were worried about the portfolio and how we would treat that. And that was really of concern for us because it meant that we were not getting the breadth of students that we would want. The other part was that we wanted to advance the passion that students have for art making and to encourage and enable that. And sometimes, just for circumstances that you find yourselves in, you've not been able to do one of the main art type courses or design type courses at high school. And so this again was presenting a barrier which we thought was really challenging and problematic. What we do recommend, though, of course, is that you will find the transition easier and you'll have a whole series of skills, conceptual and material, which will be an advantage to you if you take subjects like art, design, the technical subjects, visual communication. But I imagine that for those of you that are wanting to focus on art making, these won't be new to you, and you will be undertaking those courses if timetable allows, if you're able to do them, if they're offered in your schools. So that's really still really helpful, but not doing them is not a barrier to succeeding at Elam, and that's something that we're really focused on. I think that one of the things which is interesting about what we're trying to do with the new changes is we're trying to serve different types of students. So Peter, you're really committed to in-depth develop your artistic practice. That doesn't go away, that's still what we do. And then Mary-Jane, you're focused on things which you find the academic study helps enrich and you bring to your practice, which is also really exciting. What that means for us is that there's no one way of doing a fine arts degree. So what we're focused on now is advancing the conjoint options so that they're much, much more expansive. So currently we just have the one with arts, and arts is great, and there's lots of different types of majors that you can do, but we're expanding that to 11 different types of degrees. So we're across every faculty now working in partnership around these conjoint degrees.